In Texas, you're going to see a continued racial violence occurring. And so we talked before about how Mexican Americans in Texas were losing their land. They were being pressured off their land. There was lynchings that were occurring as the Texas Rangers and other local officials would target Mexican Americans, sometimes those who were innocent completely of any crime, and would actually lynch them. They would murder them. And so all of this violence that was happening in Texas would eventually be met with some resistance by Mexican Americans. One example of resistance to all of this racial violence in Texas would be led by Nicasio Idar. Nicasio Idar had started his own publication, right? So working in the media, called La Crónica. La Crónica basically was a newspaper that was used to highlight all of the injustices that were happening with Mexican Americans at this time, such as police brutality and these lynchings. But Idar went beyond even that, and he helped to organize what was called the First Mexican Congress. Now, this is not, like the same as the legislative body of Congress. No, this is a conference. Okay, this is a conference where you would have several hundred Mexican Americans coming together to try to come up with a solution to all this racial violence that is happening in Texas. And ultimately, what they will come up with is the organization of the Mexican League of Beneficence and Protection. All right, and so this is an organization that will try to protect Mexican Americans and support their rights. Now, out of the same conference, the First Mexican Congress that took place in 1911, you're going to see the rise of another organization, a women's organization, right? The Mexican Feminist League. The first president of the league will actually be the daughter of Nicasio Idar, Jovita Idar. And this is Jovita right here. And so Jovita Idar was heavily involved in Mexican-American civil rights during this time. She was supporting equal education for Mexican-American women through her work with the Mexican Feminist League. They supported the development of schools. They operated a number of fundraisers and charity work, such as collecting clothes for the poor and distributing food to poor communities. And so this was Mexican-American women getting involved and trying to fight for better rights for Mexican-Americans during this time. Jovita Idar being a main example of that. She was involved as a writer. She wrote for her dad's publication and actually ran the publication when he passed away. And she also wrote for other publications as well, always supporting the rights of Mexican-Americans. See, it's important for Mexican-Americans to organize during this time. That's why they're creating the Mexican League of Beneficence and Protection, because it's much easier to fight for your rights when you have an organization, people that are organized together and putting their demands out there and raising awareness of the problems that are happening to the community, right? That's the importance of having a media outlet as well, like La Crónica, right? So that's the whole point of their work, right? To organize and publicize what is happening in Texas, this racial violence towards Mexican Americans. There were other acts of resistance that took place in Texas during this time as well that weren't so nonviolent. In fact, there was an actual revolutionary movement taking place in Texas during this time. And this was all centered around El Plan de San Diego. And so the plan basically called for Mexican Americans and other groups as well, such as African Americans and Native Americans, to come together and rise up and take over all that land that was lost from Mexico during the Mexican-American War. So we're talking about Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Colorado, California. They wanted to retake this land and start their own republic for Mexican Americans. Okay, so a republic separate from Mexico for Mexican Americans, right? And so they were calling for an actual revolution. These calls included the calls for the murder of all Anglo-American men over the age of 16, right? That was part of the plan. to murder all Anglo-American men that were over 16. And so this was an actual revolutionary movement. Some individuals were killed, property was destroyed, animals were taken from ranches, and so this was an actual movement taking place there, is starting out of the town of San Diego in Texas, not San Diego, California. It's, I want to make sure you guys want to, I want to make sure you guys understand this was happening in Texas, right? Out of a town named San Diego in Texas. That's where the plan was written. Okay, and so there was a lot of guerrilla activity happening. Bands were going out. They were attacking different ranches that were owned by Anglo-Americans, such as the King Ranch. And eventually, Texas officials would fight back against this movement. And so you would see the Texas Rangers in particular start to organize against this revolutionary movement. And overall, you would have thousands of Mexican Americans killed in this conflict. And keep in mind that many of these Mexican Americans were not even part of this revolutionary movement. Some were completely innocent, but still, because of their race, they were targeted by the Texas Rangers. Other Mexican Americans were forced to sign over their lands, and these lands would be sold to Anglo-Americans eventually. That was part of this as well. So you have killings going on. You have Mexican Americans fleeing their homes, some migrating to Mexico to escape the violence of the Texas Rangers, who are retaliating against the revolutionary guerrilla groups who were fighting for this revolution during this time. Eventually, the Texas Rangers will put down the revolution. Now, there are rumors that the Mexican government actually was instigating El Plan de San Diego and had a part in writing the plan and supporting the group and financing it. The theory is that Mexico wanted to gain recognition from the United States during this time because there's a revolution going on in Mexico around this time, and so the Carranza government wanted to gain recognition, and so they figured that they could pressure the U.S. To recognize their government if they would help to stop this revolution that was taking place in the Southwest, right? So basically, if the Mexican government was financing it, they could stop financing it and put an end to the revolution, and they actually did. Okay, so basically, yeah, the Mexican government stopped funding the revolution there in the Southwest that was taking place after they gained recognition from the United States government, right? So there's a lot of politics involved in this revolution. It wasn't, just Mexican Americans rising up against the racial violence, although that was part of it as well.